Welcome to the Program Pod, a national award-winning program on the RCBC Podcast Network, which takes a deep dive into the programs offered at RCBC through different perspectives of students, faculty, and employers. Hello and welcome to the Program Pod. Yes, that's right, the national award-winning program here in the RCBC Podcast Network. And this is Jay Varga for the first episode of the new semester, which is underway right now. Come back from a nice summer break. Hope you enjoyed the commencement series coverage. But this time we're going to be talking some criminal justice. I got three excellent guests with us. I have Jonathan Darpino, a current criminal justice major at RCBC, Joe Rizzo, a fellow colleague of mine, RCBC assistant professor in a criminal justice program, and maybe soon to be play caller for the Philadelphia Phillies, and Willie Bonds, deputy commissioner for the New Jersey Department of Corrections, who has over 25 years of correctional experience. Gentlemen, welcome to the Program Pod.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Step on up. All right. So, as usually, I like to start with the student first here for the RCBC. So, we're going to start with you, John. First of all, nice and easy. What brought you to RCBC? And was criminal justice also your first choice?
Criminal justice was actually not my first choice. I came in with, I think it was education, but I kind of actually just took a break from that, and then I came back with like a new focus. So. With criminal justice, yeah.
So what made you change? Like why did you want to be criminal justice?
I guess I came in I picked education because I really wasn't actually sure what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to get into like a public service, but really I kind of just narrowed it down after just taking some time to think about it.
And why did you want to get into public service?
Both my parents are public servants. My mom is actually support coordinator for people with special needs, awesome. And then she also works for New Jersey Department of Families and Children and Families, sorry.
Okay.
And then my dad's a retired teacher.
Awesome. All right. So actually speaking of teaching, and we have one of your teachers right next to you with Joe Rizzo. You're actually just getting out of your first class in the semester with Professor Rizzo, aren't you?
Yep. Yeah. Just left.
How was today's class?
It's good.
Yeah. You feel good to be back?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you've had class with Professor Rizzo before, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So what are you learning from him?
The last class I took with him was criminal law, so it was just kind of like a kind of an introductory thing to criminal law and just a whole bunch of aspects of that.
Okay, and so what are you looking to go from here? Like criminal justice, obviously, and we'll talk about it throughout the program, can offer a various careers, right? So what are you trying to specialize in? Where do you think you're trying to go with this?
So I came in thinking I wanted to get into law enforcement, but now I'm kind of looking at law school as another option. So I'm just weighing some different options at the moment.
Okay, just kind of going through. And you're a part of the 3+1 program?
Yep. Yeah, this is my junior year.
Okay. So the best advice so far you've taken away from, any of the criminal justice classes, for other students that are coming in?
I guess it would be like kind of just stay diverse and just be flexible. I mean, like I said, I came in thinking I wanted to do law enforcement, but a few professors have kind of pointed me towards law school too. So
even kind of thinking you were doing education.
Yeah,
switched over to that.
So
right?
Yeah, definitely.
And what are some of the challenges, being a student going through this program?
I guess a balance between working, finding time to spend with family, friends, but definitely just balance.
So you mean, just going to college?
Yeah.
Going to college and working.
Stuff,
right. So looping in Professor Rizzo, is it okay to call you Joe?
Yes,
okay,
please do.
Because Joe and I, again, for anybody listening out there, Joe and I worked across the hallway from each other. They're at the criminal justice wing up there in Laurel Hall in the 300 suites, but I tucked me away in the radio, which we kind of shifted into podcast. But Joe and I are always talking baseball a lot of the times, and maybe we'll have you do a little play-by-play or something of sorts. But before we get into your background, I always like to ask the faculty members, why did you pick a particular student? And, our person who handles our social media, Victoria O'Reilly from our marketing department, was doing an excellent story on John. She said he's an awesome person. I want to know why you think he was an awesome person.
Well, my experiences with John in class have been excellent. He's an excellent student. He's driven. He works hard. He cares about success. And he mentioned law school. He's an excellent writer, and certainly that's going to take him a long way, especially when it comes to going to law school. But he has a real interest in criminal justice. Every class that he's had with me, you can tell immediately that he cares. He wants to do well. So I'm fortunate. When Victoria asked me for names, Jonathan's one of a number of really good students who are here that I could have recommended. And I'm glad Jonathan was the one who decided to do this. Like I said, he's done a great job here.
So you talk about a great writer. Why is that important in this field?
Well, in almost any field, but especially in criminal justice, you have to be able to communicate. I spent a lot of time in my career working for the New Jersey Department of Corrections, as has Deputy Commissioner Bonds, and communication is one of the biggest things that we and I dealt with, and he's dealing with. And simply writing a report is, for many in criminal justice and law enforcement, you name it, it's every day. You're asked to write a report. And in many cases, it becomes a legal document. So that has to be written correctly and properly. And it's sharing information. And if you can't do that, it can make for some stressful situations. And Jonathan is one of many of our students who can communicate and write well.
Is that true, Deputy Commissioner?
Oh, absolutely, it's true. Communication is a big part of what we do. Those from the outside who may not be familiar with what we do may be shocked to hear that, but having great communication skills can make or break you on any given day. If you're not able to either verbally articulate what just took place and your justification for the actions that you took or the actions that you did not take, or if you're not able to memorialize those actions or your justification in writing, it can lead to some undesirable outcomes, I'll say, or at the very least, just difficult situations.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't realize writing was that important. But the thing about it, when we talk about just having to put, like you said, put those reports and then being a legal binding document too, it's kind of it's out there. So Joe, you're starting to get into your background. So let's talk about that. Can you talk about your background and kind of how led you up to RCBC and teaching here?
Well, it's a long story.
We got a little bit of time.
But I started a long time ago as a public school teacher. And my neighbor came to me one day and said they need teachers at the Garden State Correctional Facility. And I've told this story many, many times. And to my students, I've heard it more than once. I actually thought he was speaking Greek to me. That, are you kidding me? That I'm going to actually, you want me to teach in prison with, convicted felons, et cetera, et cetera. And I had no concept of what prison was other than what I'd seen on TV. And I made the decision to do it and spent the next 27 years working for the New Jersey Department of Corrections. I will tell you, and I think, again, Deputy Commissioner Bonds will confirm this, it is a field that many people do not think about going into. In my wildest dreams, I never thought this is where I would go, but I'm very proud of what I did there. And I still, to this day, get to talk about it. And I became a teacher there and was promoted up the ranks. I became director of education, assistant superintendent. And then going back over 20 years now, I was promoted to prison administrator. New Jersey doesn't use the term warden, they use prison administrator. And that's what I became. I was administrator of the Mountain View Correctional Facility, and then I became administrator of our reception center. Retired and continued to work in the halfway house field, which is in conjunction with the Department of Corrections. I won't bore you with all those details, but and then as luck would have it, I became an adjunct professor and was hired here full time, and here I am.
And here you are.
Yeah, it's been a long but wonderful career for myself, and to be here now at RCBC is just a tremendous benefit to me.
And so what type of courses and content are you specifically teaching here at RCBC? Obviously, it's within the criminal justice program.
Well, I teach the corrections classes here. I teach community corrections, which really go hand in hand in many respects. And I also teach criminal law. I'm not a lawyer, but I really enjoy teaching criminal law. And as part of our 3+1 program, I teach theories of crime. That was a course that we've been teaching here since our affiliation with Rowan University going back to 2016. And I just finished that class. Jonathan is in that class. We just finished that at 320. So that's pretty much what I teach here. And we we have a great program here, one of the larger majors here. It has been historically for many, many years here, and it's continuing to grow in that regard. So we've been blessed with a large contingent of students.
Now, John, have you taken a criminal law course?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that what kind of made you start to think towards, instead of being like a statey, kind of going more towards being law?
Yeah, and some family members that I have an aunt who's a retired judge as well. So
okay, all right. So Joe, you said there was obviously a lot of success stories like John. Do you still keep in touch with all those students?
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of our in many cases, they become police officers, without going through names and so forth. There's been a number who become police officers. Some still keep in contact or ask for references. You often get a call, Mr. Rizzo, I had you 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I'm trying to get this job, that job, etc. And, they're asking for references and so forth. So, yeah, we still do a lot of that to try to help them in that regard. And
Deputy Commissioner Bonds, I will get you in a second. I promise. I try to loop everybody in, but, we're promoting a program here a little bit on the program pod of RCBC. So these prison administrator / warden or whatever,
right.
And I'm sure you have tons of stories.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you share some of these stories in class?
Yes, I do.
What can you share? Maybe
well,
one here?
It's just the daily management and the individuals who you meet, and when you work in a system as long as Deputy Commissioner Bond and I did, if you put us together, it's over 50 years of experience. You meet a lot of individuals, and I'm not just talking about the offender. And I know there's a new name for that now.
Incarcerated person.
Incarcerated, thank you. Yeah, I want to make sure I get that right. Incarcerated person, but it's also the staff you get to meet. I've worked with some tremendous individuals in my career who taught me things that I never even thought about when I started working in the business. And it's part of the reason I was successful. And you get to meet a lot of good people who really care about what they're doing. And it's a business where if you need that support, you need that guidance every day. And certainly I work with some notorious offenders who, were well known, not only in New Jersey, but in the United States. But that's part of it. But you work with most offenders that you work with, they're going to be in and out of the system. They're not staying for 30, 40, 50 years. That's not the norm, but the thing that I think the thing I can comment on probably best was the experiences I had with the staff and their willingness to put themselves in harm's way to keep people safe and secure in very, very trying and difficult situations. And I'm sure, again, you could... Deputy Commissioner Bond is the person you really should talk about this, who's living it as we speak. I've been retired, and he certainly could speak in much more detail than I could about some of that.
Well, let's use that little segue.
There you go.
See, we're working. That's
see?
one thing from play by play.
There you go.
But okay, again, Deputy Commissioner Bonds here. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit? Before I get into some more of your background stuff,
Sure.
What is some of the stuff you see on a day-to-day basis, or what Joe was talking about?
It's an interesting question because it's kind of like two sides to it as I see it anyway. People watch TV shows like Oz is one of the more popular ones, and people think that everyday corrections life looks like that. Mm-hmm. Sensationalized to a degree, of course. Most things you see on TV are sensationalized a bit. We do have some trying situations. We have some dangerous situations and scenarios that play out on a day-to-day basis, without a doubt. But on a normal day in most facilities, things are pretty routine, where you have individuals getting up in the morning, they're going to work, they're going to school, they're going to some type of program, things of that nature. And those activities continue throughout the day. We do have individuals, unfortunately, who engage in behavior that's less than desirable and put our staff in some difficult situations, up to and including staff assaults. Those type of situations, needless to say, are unfortunate and not good situations for our staff. But that's kind of what it looks like on a day-to-day perspective. Sure. Like Joe said, we do have When people look at it from the outside in, people are always wondering what it's like. We do have some individuals who have committed some crimes with some, very high, notoriety. It's probably one of the more interesting things is interacting with those individuals on a day-to-day basis, because we interact with everybody. It doesn't matter if they're there for a year or if they're there for 45, 50 years, or they're doing a life sentence. It doesn't matter. We are interacting with them on a daily basis. They are all offered programming, education, and all of the services that we have that are available for all of them. And just to piggyback off of what you said also, Joe, earlier about the incarcerated population as a whole, at least I would say anywhere between 80 to 85% of them are going home. Mm-hmm. We have a very small group, a small percentage that are serving either a life sentence or multiple life sentences, or maybe they're at an advanced stage and they have a very long sentence as well. And, they may not make it home. But outside of that, 80 to 85% of these individuals are coming back to our communities. So that's why another reason it isn't coming upon us to make sure that we are providing them with the tools, the education, the services to help them hopefully successfully reintegrate back into society.
So what kind of tools and services are you providing? Like can you give us an example? Try to help, better them to kind of get them ready for that society adjustment again.
Well, one of the main things is education. Unfortunately, a lot of the incarcerated individuals who end up with us don't even have a high school education. So we offer GED programs, and we also offer higher education as well. Individuals who are that interested and motivated can obtain their associate's degree or their bachelor's degree. We even have a master's degree program. So, and these are partnerships with, obviously higher education institutions throughout the state on the higher ed side.
Yeah.
But so those are some of the things on the education side. We have programming that addresses substance use disorders. We have programs that address anxiety, any type of use disorder, whether it be I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Mental health issue,
Well, I was talking about more specifically NA.
Oh, yeah. AA programs.
GA, any of those programs that address any type of addictions. Like you said, also mental health is a big part. A large percentage of our incarcerated populations has some type of mental health disorder.
Sure.
So we have what we call inpatient mental health housing, and we have outpatient. Obviously, inpatient is more intense. But so there are a host of other offerings as well. We have religious services that are available to the incarcerated population, and like I said, a bevy of other programming.
So, Joe, I know you used to take students to, I think it was a prison before, right?
Garden State Correctional.
I remember do you still do that?
Yes, we do.
Is that a part of his program, or something you oversee?
In terms of?
I mean, I didn't know. For like the listener or myself, right? Because I know you go into prisons and such. I don't know if that's some of the prisons that he's referencing or some of the inmates and stuff. Do you guys team up together, or where are you taking those students to go kind of see that for like?
Well, we'll go.
We're
scheduled.
Not like Oz.
We're scheduled to go to Garden State in October, and I've done that for many years, and we stopped during COVID.
Sure.
Once, but again, thanks to Deputy Director Bonds and his support, we've been able to start that again, to be quite frank. And he's been a big supporter of what we're trying to do here with the students. And again, I'm going to say this quite frankly, he's a member of our advisory board here. He's been nothing but supportive of the educational piece here. He speaks in my classes, and he's encouraged others to get involved and so forth. And so it's been great. And the touring the prison adds so much to the class. It really does. And the students come back very, very different than before. I try to do it right in the middle of the semester, and their perspective changes after they've been to the prison and then afterwards, because now they understand many of the things that we talk about in class. You can only talk so much or show a video about prison life, and no one really understands it until they see it.
Sure. And
they actually get to go to a prison, and that's because of the support we get from the New Jersey Department of Corrections. And I can't thank them enough, because the feedback that I get from the students is incredible. Many of them say, I never thought about working in corrections. And now by you taking me to see what goes on, changed my perspective, because often they have a bias. As Deputy Director Bonds has said, they think it's Oz, and it is an Oz. I mean, certainly, can you put yourself in harm's way? Absolutely, but that's part of what many aspects of law enforcement is. But once they come back, their perspective has changed, and they realize that people are doing, it's not just marching them to eat and so forth. There's programming and treatment. And again, that's available throughout the state of New Jersey in every correctional facility in the state. And one thing I wanted to piggyback on too, on what Deputy Director Bond said, there is a therapeutic community also. There is an entire prison, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's dedicated to treatment for offenders with substance abuse. So, I mean, it's out there for them. And, so there's a lot available to them. But my point is, again, going back to that, the students get to now see it.
Yeah.
They see cells, they walk hallways, they see what the correctional police officer has to go through on a daily basis. It's just, I can't say enough about it,
John, have you taken that tour yet?
No, I took his corrections class, but I believe it still wasn't offered.
No.
Because we're still kind of coming back to it, around or come back from it.
Yeah.
So, Deputy Bonds, why do you think that's important? Because I didn't know you're part of the advisory board and going into the classrooms. So it seems like you're really reaching out to the community beyond like your roles and responsibilities. Why do you think that is so important?
Well, number one, on a personal level, it means a lot to me. Okay. It's kind of how I was brought to corrections. I was taking a class at Cumberland County College, and my professor at the time was an associate warden for the federal system. Yep. And that individual spoke about the fact that the state system was going to be building a facility in Bridgeton, which is now Southwood State Prison, and spoke about the process and, how you would go about getting hired if you were interested. And then we actually toured Southern State Correctional Facility in one of my classes. That was a totally different experience. Southern State at that time was a lot different than it was prior to us closing it about a year ago. But anyway, that experience opened my eyes to the opportunities that were available with the department. So on a personal note, it means a lot to me. But from the department side, it means a lot, and it means a lot to our commissioner. Like she likes to say all the time, we're trying to pull back the veil on what it is that we do, because a lot of people don't understand what we do. They think everything's negative. There's all these problems. Look, we do have our problems. It is a challenging environment. I'll give you that for sure. But we do a lot of positive things. We have great staff. They work hard. They're dedicated. Like Joe said, our correctional police officers, they put themselves in harm's way, at times when necessary to protect, their fellow officer, other staff members, and the incarcerated population. But, I like to tell our officers, they wear many hats. Yep. They're officers, there's counselors, they play a lot of different roles to get through a day. Everybody that works for the department plays a role in the successful reintegration of an incarcerated person. So we're trying to educate the public about some of our positives, which there are many.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
so it means a lot for us to get that community outreach. Absolutely.
So you talked about obviously that experience, and I think I told you, Joe, before. Like when I was teaching radio production, I used to bring the students to the studio itself, because it's one thing to kind of do it in the classroom and you teach them how to use their voice and stuff, but until you take them to the actual broadcast booth, right? Then they get to see with their eyes the real studio setup, and then you can just kind of see like them just really starting to take it in and wanting to go with it. But Deputy Bonds, or Commissioner Deputy Bonds, you said that tour, but was there also something else that kind of led you to this career path, or, to get you to where you are today?
The opportunities. That professor at the time spoke about, he was speaking more about the federal system, which is, very similar to ours in a lot of ways. It is corrections. But he just spoke about the opportunities that were available. When you talk about advancement, when you get in the door, there's so many directions that you can go. We spend a lot of time talking about officers and, uniform staff. That's where I came from. So that's kind of where my heart is. But that's only a part of what we do. There are more civilian positions. We call them civilian if you're not in uniform, civilian positions, than there are uniform positions, meaning there are more actual officers or uniform staff, but I'm talking about variety of positions, from teachers, the maintenance staff, to chaplains. You talk about medical professionals. I mean, that's just barely, scratching the surface of all the numerous civilian titles that are available to individuals. And once you get in the door, then you have opportunities within that division or that unit to advance. You may get to the point where you are the supervisor of that unit, and from there you may want to go further. Maybe you do want to run a facility, you want to be an administrator, so you can kind of work your way up the tree. It goes in so many directions and there's so many branches. It's just the opportunities are unbelievable. I tell people, we just had a graduation on Friday, I believe it was, if my memory's correct. And one of the things that I told our recruits, I said, listen, I said, a lot of people don't know this as well. We're the largest law enforcement agency in the state, number one. I said, there are so many opportunities in this department. I said, no other law enforcement agency offers the opportunity that we do. I said, just nobody can match it. I'm sorry, it's bragging, but it's the truth, just by sheer numbers. So, that's kind of it in a nutshell. For me, it was about opportunity, and I was fortunate enough to get in the door, and I was fortunate enough to take advantage of the opportunities that were available.
And that's why I kind of like to have this show, because myself tuning in, listening, or just bringing you guys on the show, when I think kind of criminal justice and like prison reform or whatever, I think warden, and I think just the jail guards, right? And maybe like the male or the medical staff or lunch cafeteria staff and stuff that know it spiders out as deep as it did, even to, like I said, medical education and all that. And that's why I try to inform and educate as well, here within the program. And it's great to see you, Deputy, getting into the classroom. And, hopefully, John gets to kind of experience some of that and decides, okay, maybe there's other opportunities in going for that. So with that, how does someone know if criminal justice is, right for them, or law or whatever? And it's open floor to you guys, and then I can tap in John in a second too.
That's an interesting question. And I gave you my story earlier. I never really thought about working in criminal justice. I was a public school teacher and transitioned that into teaching in prison. And then again, to piggyback, the opportunities were there for advancement. I went back to college, got my master's degree so I could be the assistant education supervisor and eventually the director of education. I had to get the same credentials as a school principal. So that meant that I was still using my education background, but I was also advancing in the prison system. And that's how I did it. Not to speak for Deputy Commissioner Bonds, but he was promoted. He's not going to say, but he was promoted to sergeant, lieutenant, and right up the ranks, and that's how he did it. But the opportunities are there. I think that's the key piece of it. That again, I'm repeating, but I think that's a big part of this. That those opportunities are there for you. But like I said, I didn't really plan on this. It didn't even cross my mind, to be quite frank. But I guarantee you can get a lot of people who will say the same thing. Again, I'll give you a quick story. When I was up at Mountain View, many of my employees came from the Phillipsburg, Easton, Pennsylvania area, and a lot of them would say to me, "I said, how'd you get working here?" Well, when my neighbor said they were hiring, or they closed the plant and we needed jobs, and somebody said they're hiring at the prison. And that's kind of how it evolved into, back then, that's how the word was passed. But I guarantee if you went to all the other prisons, many of the same comments were there. Or my father worked here. My mother worked here, and they had a successful career, and the opportunity is there for me. So it was passed on that way also in many cases. And I suspect it's still that way today.
That's true. That is true. A lot of individuals, or a lot of our staff are legacy staff members.
Yes.
Where, like you said, someone in their family, where there's their father, their mother, aunt, cousin, neighbor, whoever it may be, that introduced them to corrections. Because let's be honest, I don't think anybody growing up necessarily as a child said, "Oh, I'm going to go work for corrections." They don't even know what it is, to be honest. So at some point in time, you're going to get introduced some way or another, and that's typically how it happens. Still to this day, even though recruiting is much more difficult nowadays.
Yes.
Many years ago, we didn't even have to recruit.
Yeah.
We had more individuals interested in seeking employment with the department than we had vacancies. Now it's the other way around. But that's kind of being mirrored as, what we're seeing in society as a whole, and particularly with law enforcement. We're not the only law enforcement agency that is struggling with staffing.
Yeah, I saw some of the statistics and stuff.
Yes.
A lot of people are starting to resign or
Yes.
kind of changing careers. So I guess, is that like the biggest challenge right now in the criminal justice system or corrections and such, is just the staffing itself?
Absolutely. By far, that is our biggest challenge right now. Because listen, in any field, no matter where you work, you need what? You need staff.
Yeah.
In order to get the job done, in order for you to your mission to be completed, you got to have staff. You got to have boots on the ground. So when you don't have that, especially on the uniform side, because this is where it's more dire on the uniform side, it leads to burnout for staff.
Just
because
took the words right out of my mouth.
yeah, it's true, because when we have X amount of officers that are scheduled for a shift. So if we have 20 vacancies, well, guess what? That's going to be filled by somebody either working a double shift or somebody coming in on a day off. Well, that's fine, for most individuals to a degree, because, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of individuals like to make some extra money, by way of overtime. So a little bit of overtime is actually a positive thing for staff morale. However, when you're being mandated to work several times a week, it gets old, quite frankly, and staff gets tired. They get frustrated, they get burned out. And then when they get burned out, guess what happens? They stop coming to work.
Yep.
Now that's another vacancy or another 5 vacancies. So it quickly snowballs into a very difficult situation where we're doing more mandating of staff to work overtime than we certainly would like to. So, since things had shifted in that way where now we have to go out and recruit, that's exactly what we're doing. We have a recruitment unit. You can find them at any event throughout the state, recruiting staff on a regular basis, trying to get staff in the door, trying to educate people as far as the benefits of corrections. I mean, at the end of the day, as we all know, one of the big things about state employment is, the eligibility for a pension. There aren't many employers other than some states that are offering, retirement plans with defined benefits. So that's something that we still have, not as generous as it used to be, many, many years ago for those who've been around for a while. But nonetheless, listen, it's still a very good defined benefit plan, and it's certainly worthwhile. It can set you up for a nice retirement if, for anybody who chooses this career path. So, and it is a law enforcement field. A lot of people are interested in law enforcement, but they don't think of corrections. So we're educating them about that. Then we educate them again. I know I've mentioned this before, but can't harp on it enough. Career advancement. If you're looking to get ahead, before I'm starting again, I typically talking about officers because that's our largest segment of our staff. There's so many opportunities for advancement. So, it's about what an individual wants to do. Once you get in the door, you want to be a sergeant, you want to be a lieutenant, you want to be a major, you want to move on the administrative side. The opportunities are plentiful.
That's always the hardest part when you get into that field. It's how can I continue to move up?
Yes.
Right. And instead of getting into it like what they call a dead end job or something. Right. And it seems like there's obviously plenty of opportunities and to kind of make things right. Because I know there's also, you would know from professional experience, but sometimes the tension out there with the public justice system and the law enforcement and the corrections and the society, of course, of social media kind of adding fuel to the fire at source. And those are some of the other challenges. But I know people out there want to make a difference, right? And there's so many ways to make a difference, through, your work. What do you think they could do to try to make the public justice system, I don't say better working? I guess a lot of it has to do, it comes down to staffing a little bit, right?
Well, since we're speaking here, I think education is a part of it. I would argue that our students we're trying to make them aware of what society, in terms of what society is and what the criminal justice system is nationwide, the good and the bad of it. Yep. I think that's our responsibility as educators. And if we provide that for them, it gives them at least an open mind in considering any area of law enforcement. And, we talked a lot today about corrections kind of being like, that's kind of a forgotten field. It's incumbent on us to try to share that with them. And certainly I'm biased, obviously, because that's what I did. So I'm proud of what I did, and I certainly share that with the students. But that doesn't mean it's for everybody.
Right.
So we try to give them as many areas that they can work in: local law enforcement, the state police, parole, probation, court work, drug court. There's so much out there now. And we try to expose them to all of it. And I think that's our responsibility here in criminal justice. And I think we do a very good job with that. I think if you ask Jonathan, I think he's certainly been exposed to that, and he's working on possibly making a decision to go to law school, which is commendable.
All right, John, would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, like coming in, I definitely kind of had some certain notions about like what criminal justice really was, but one of the first courses I took was corrections, and that kind of really painted a picture of what was really out there. And it's just like so much more than actually just law enforcement. There's so many different aspects that you could get into.
Yeah, I think that you're talking about the educational level, because some people, you said they had to go in and have that perspective once they start going through it, and then they're like, I don't want to have a gun. I just want to be kind of behind the desk and do the administrative work, right? Because they don't want to deal with some of the people in the public. But it's kind of like an onion where you're peeling back everything else. You're starting to see, okay, this can spider into this. But knowing that there's job opportunities and advancement, and like you said, pension, which we kind of gravitated here towards education, because there's a couple times I was considering leaving and stuff, but it's kind of tough to leave when you have like that pension kind of sitting right there for you, and to take care of your family and your legacy, right? kind of going on. But tying it back a little bit to this, to our program here, 3+1, John, for a student that's maybe, again, looking to kind of get into it, what would you say about that 3+1 program, and maybe why you would recommend it to somebody?
Especially for someone who wants to get into law enforcement, like you can get into like a local agency with 60 credits, or like some of them don't even have any, like just a high school diploma or a GED. But like speaking off both of these guys said, just like advancing in your career, you're gonna need a degree, and it's expensive. And RCBC is a great option. It's just like for me, it's like right down the road, so I'm not really traveling that much. The cost of tuition is pretty low as well, and also the value is great.
Sure,
like it's a great education. Just for what I'm paying.
That's a lot of people see. They they don't want to be in the debt of student loans, and then they can get the education, get back into the field and working kind of right away. Which to parlay that question, there, Deputy Commissioner Bonds, internships. Do you guys offer them, and maybe how does someone kind of go about trying to get one if they want to? Approach that.
We do have internships. Like most people during COVID, just about everything stopped.
Yeah.
Whether it be internships or just about anything that involved individuals from the outside coming in the facility, pretty much came to a halt. But now that we've kind of return to what we call our new normal and things are opening back up, we certainly are open to internships. Because of the work that we do, obviously our internships, I'm not going to say that they're limited. We don't have, they are somewhat limited. You're not going to have internships for an officer, for example. Yeah. You're not going to shadow an officer, nothing like that. But we have internships in some of our other, divisions and units. The connections sometimes are made through the higher educational institutions who have ties to our department, and or through our human resources department, who that's the division in which I would refer anybody to if they're interested in seeing what type of internships are available at any given time.
I would think shadowing an officer might be quite an experience of an internship itself. Joe, are we providing internships, or do you offer them to students or making them aware throughout the program?
We do both through RCBC. It's a 3-credit course that they can take through us. They are all required, if they're in 3+1 as seniors, to do a criminal justice internship to graduate through Rowan University. So as an example, Jonathan probably next year will be doing an internship, and it has to be approved by the internship supervisor, who will be coming to class probably in the next couple of months to talk to the students about that. But they all have to do one, yes. And I encourage them to take something that they think they might be interested in, as opposed to, I'll just take this because it's down the street. Because in the end, it benefits nobody. It doesn't benefit the agency, and it certainly doesn't benefit them, and they're right back where they were. Because it seems to me more so today than, again, in my time, a lot of the students aren't sure where they want to go. They often are debating back and forth about what area they want to work in. And not just in criminal justice, but I think in a lot of fields. But certainly in criminal justice, that's an issue. So I try to get them to consider something that would be something that they might want to do.
Well, I think, and not to cut you off, but internships also open that door, right?
Correct.
And get you, and so much about networking.
Right? And especially in today's world where there's such a need for people. If you do well in an internship, say, at the Burlington County Office of Probation, let's say as an example, there's a good chance you might get a job. The same in corrections, or, some of the local police departments are using our students for internships. Yep. Well, they've exposed themselves, especially if they're doing well. Mm-hmm. There's a good chance that, many of these agencies have openings. There's also been some freedom through civil service today. Their requirements have gotten, correct me if I'm wrong, are less strict than they used to be because of the need. So it's a tremendous opportunity right now in this field.
Yeah,
it's unprecedented in between my years and Deputy Commissioner's years. This is just, it's unfathomable to both of us that this happened.
That's why I try to always push my students for internships as well.
Oh yeah,
because I said it's just about, again, who getting your foot in the door, and then if you're out, like you said, your work shows for itself. Yeah. Because the biggest time, the biggest catch-22 is like, you need experience, but how do you get experience without the actual experience?
Yes.
Right. So you get in there, and I'm pretty sure is it like almost like a small world in your fields. Like a lot of people know who other people are working out. Because I know in radio, people think radio broadcasting, it's such a huge avenue, especially in Philadelphia, like a top 5 market, top 10 market and stuff. But really, we know a lot of people in connections. You jump in from radio station to radio station, you have like that word of mouth, or like that letter recommendation, right?
Sure.
And you guys, I'm guessing the same thing is for your field?
Yeah, it can be. It's a large department. The field itself is large as well, not just state, county corrections, and the federal. The federal has several facilities here in New Jersey as well. But a lot of us know each other. If we don't know each other directly, we know each other indirectly, or we know staff members that are part of their teams, and so forth and so on. So corrections is a large, but yet in some ways a small community, all at the same time.
All right. Well, before we get ready to wrap it up, because we're kind of way past time, but I said I just getting into conversations, I get really interested and curious, and trying to educate the listeners out there listening, not knowing about a lot of this stuff. Now, I used to try to work in dad jokes throughout the show, but trying to find prison dad jokes, I'm sure my Google search bar at work's not going to be, I might be getting a letter later or an email from OIT or something that's kind of going on. So I'm going to limit to just one. You don't feel like you have to laugh for it, or it can be whatever. And then we'll kind of open up the floor for some final thoughts, some comments, suggestions, and stuff. But what do you call it when a prisoner takes his own mugshot? Crickets?
Yeah, crickets.
A selfie.
Oh boy.
See, that's how bad it is.
Oh,
right?
boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can work on it. I'm not going to do some of the other ones because a lot of them is like they're all played off the cell and everything. So you're all cracking up now off the side because it's so bad, right? That's the way it is. But again, before we wrap it up, is there any final remarks that any of you would like to say to somebody, again, looking to get into this field? I know we kind of touched base on it. Where to go, any websites to promote, programs, whatever. The floor is yours. I guess we can start with John. Anything you want to say? You want to just shout out parents?
Yeah, shout out my parents, definitely. I guess for someone who's already in the criminal justice program at RCBC or any school, I might sound like a professor and administrator, but there's a lot of great resources the school has. Like definitely, like they were saying, her internships. There's an app, Handshake. I think it's I'm honest. I'm on there every day looking at just different opportunities that are out there in the field. That's like another thing. It's just it's like a motivation, I guess. You can kind of really see what's out there, what you can do. It's interesting to look at it. Yeah.
Gentlemen, any final remarks, anything?
Well, I would say again, we as educators try to expose them to the everything that's out there and it's available to them. And we also give them, I think the other thing is we give them both the positives and the negatives of working in this business. And I think that's important. We're very honest with them and try to have them understand some of the things we did do well and we didn't do well. And I often tell them some of the things that I did when I was working that today I would probably, would have looked upon differently than they were back then. And we share all that. And I think that's important that they understand that. And I really believe that the experience, the college experience certainly prepares them for this type of work. I really do. And I think it is a true benefit to the employer having these individuals who have a degree from, not only RCBC, but many of the colleges.
Like a nice accredited program.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, I'm going to plug the department
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
selfishly.
No, that's what it's here for.
I think it's the Department of Corrections is a wonderful career. It is challenging. At the same time, it is very rewarding, though.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, I always use myself as an example, not because I want to tell my story per se, because I don't like telling my story, but I share it for those so that they can understand what's possible for them. When I started as an officer 25 years ago, I would have never thought I'd be sitting where I'm sitting right now. Never would have thought that in a million years. But yet it happened because I was ambitious, and I every time I was promoted into a position, I always started thinking about what's next down the road. So if I can do it, I like to tell people anybody can do it.
Sure.
It's all about what you want to do, what you want to see in your career. If you are interested in a career in the New Jersey Department of Corrections, you can just go to the New Jersey Department of Corrections homepage, and it has all our information and, different links to tell you where to go in order to seek employment. One good thing that I do want to mention that people may or may not know, we are a civil service, agency, just like, all state agencies. But for to be an officer, you do not have to take the civil service test anymore. You can take the civil service test and be hired that way. But thanks to the legislator and the governor who signed off on the law, we are able to hire directly from the streets. We don't have to just hire from the civil service list. We're actually doing both nowadays. So individuals, like I said, can go to the website, follow instructions, and work through our recruitment unit in order to complete the application, the background check, and all of the things that you need to do to get hired. So most people are used to the old way where you had to sign up, you had to pay the fee, you had to take the civil service test, you had to wait for the rankings to come out, hope the department called you, so forth and so on. You can still do that. And I would encourage anybody who's interested in corrections to still take the test when it's available, but you don't have to wait for that. You can go to our website and it will walk you right through the process. We need people. We want people. It's a great career. So I encourage anybody who's interested to go to our website.
And the website is departmentofcorrections.gov or NJ.gov, right? Or you can just Google it.
You can find it if you go to the state of New Jersey homepage,
yep.
where you have all the agencies and all the departments. That's one easy way.
Nice.
I direct people. You go there and then you can click
Find
on
the
our
sublinks.
website. Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Again, the first one of the fall semester, the fiscal 2023, or 24 really, but for the fall 2023. This has been Jay Varga. And again, I want to thank my guests, Jonathan Darpino, the criminal justice major here at RCBC, assistant professor for RCBC, Joe Rizzo, and of course, Deputy Commissioner of New Jersey Department of Corrections, Willie Bonds. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on the show. Did you have a good time?
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
having us.
Yeah, man, it was
Yes.
good times. So again, if you want to learn more information about RCBC's programs, you can visit rcbc.edu. And for other RCBC podcasts that we have, including the new Baroness podcast featuring powerful women of Burlington County, go to rcbc.edu/podcast. Also, be sure to subscribe to the program pod on anywhere you get your podcasts at, all that Apple, Google, Spotify, and everything else. But until next time, thanks for listening and enjoy.